The North Sea raged with a fury that seemed almost sentient, waves smashing against the small boat like giant fists intent on breaking everything in their path. The wind howled through the storm, tearing at the sails and tossing the vessel mercilessly across dark, churning waters. Rain fell in sheets, cutting into skin like needles, and the cold was bone-deep, gnawing at every layer of clothing until it felt as though the very marrow of her bones was freezing. Leora clutched her tiny baby to her chest, her body shaking not only from the cold but from the overwhelming terror of their situation. The infant whimpered, tiny fists clutching at her drenched tunic, unable to understand the horror surrounding them. Every wave seemed larger than the last, each crash against the hull threatening to shatter the fragile craft and send them tumbling into the abyss. She had been betrayed, abandoned by those she had once trusted. Left to die in the middle of the sea with nothing but the storm and the relentless waves to accompany her. She had known hardship before, but nothing could have prepared her for this. The sensation of the ocean attempting to swallow her whole, the helplessness of clutching a life smaller and more fragile than her own, and the bitter sting of betrayal that had brought them here. Her eyes searched the darkness, straining to see any sign of salvation, a distant light, a shadow of land, any hint that they might survive this night. But there was only the storm, infinite and unrelenting, pressing down upon her like a living entity that despised her very existence. Her lips trembled as she whispered through chattering teeth, "Hold on, my love, please, just hold on." The baby's cries pierced the roar of the storm, each small sound a dagger to her heart. She rocked gently, trying to calm him, trying to steady her own terror even as the waves tossed them like a leaf in a river of fury. Her thoughts flickered to the moment before the storm, to the betrayal that had left them stranded. She had trusted a man who promised protection, only to be shoved into this nightmare with a newborn clinging to life. The memory of his cold, uncaring eyes burned through her, making her shiver even more. Time lost meaning. Minutes stretched into eternities as the boat pitched violently, water crashing over the sides and soaking her completely. She gasped for breath between the lashing rain, clinging to the baby as though the act alone could shield him from the relentless sea. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to fight, to survive, to live for the child she now carried with her through the storm. She refused to let them both die here. And then, a shadow appeared. A massive shape cutting through the darkness, moving with a precision and strength that seemed almost unnatural. Her heart skipped, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. Could it be another cruel trick of fate, or salvation? The shadow grew closer, and she realized with sudden clarity, it was a ship. No ordinary vessel, but a sleek, powerful craft, moving through the waves with unmatched strength and control, as though guided by an unseen hand that defied the storm itself. From the deck, a figure emerged, tall, imposing, with shoulders like carved stone and eyes that gleamed like molten gold. Even in the storm, he seemed untouched by the chaos, a predator in control of the ocean itself. Her breath caught. Something deep within her recognized power, command, and authority, something she had never dared to hope for in a world that had offered only cruelty. She clutched her baby tighter, tears mingling with rain on her cheeks. "Please, please," she whispered into the wind, into the storm, into the impossibility of hope. The man's gaze fell upon her, piercing through the darkness and chaos like a blade of sunlight. Without hesitation, he moved, his figure slicing through the storm with a speed that defied reason. The boat rocked violently as he reached it, his arms strong and sure as he pulled them both aboard the safety of his vessel. Leora collapsed against him, shivering violently, unable to form words. The baby nestled against her, soothed immediately by the warmth of the man's presence, by the security that radiated from him in waves of silent authority. He carried them to the deck, his golden eyes scanning the horizon even as his hands gently cradled mother and child. "You are safe now," he said, voice low, commanding, yet with a warmth that wrapped around her heart like a shield. "I will not let anything harm you. Not the storm, not the sea, not anyone who dares to touch you." Leora's chest rose and fell with sobs, relief and fear tangled together. Who are you?" she whispered, awe and desperation in her voice. He did not answer immediately. He simply held them, his presence unwavering, the Alpha King of the Sea in all but name. "I am the one who will protect you," he said finally. "And nothing will ever take you from me." The storm raged around them, but for the first time, Leora felt a warmth, a sense of safety she had never known. The North Sea could howl, the waves could crash, and the night could threaten all she loved, but in his arms, she felt a spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they would survive. And in the back of her mind, a fragile thought began to bloom. Maybe this man, this Alpha King, was not just their savior from the storm. Maybe he was the one who could protect their hearts as well. The storm had not yet fully surrendered, the wind still tugging at sails whipping the sea into restless waves, but aboard the Alpha King's vessel, a fragile calm had settled. Leora sat huddled against him, her baby nestled safely against her chest, warm and breathing steadily. The sheer strength radiating from him was almost overwhelming, yet there was a gentleness, an unspoken promise that no harm would reach them while he stood guard. She couldn't take her eyes off him. The Alpha King was a force of nature himself, tall, broad-shouldered, and impossibly commanding. His golden eyes glimmered with an intensity that could cut through darkness, yet now they were softened by concern, by an unmistakable protectiveness aimed squarely at her and the child she cradled. Every movement, every shift of his stance, exuded control, not just over the ship, but over the very chaos of the storm itself. "You're safe," he said again, his voice low, steady, and impossibly soothing, even against the roar of the wind. "I've got you both. I won't let anything happen to you." Leora swallowed, her throat tight with emotion. I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought we would die out there. There was no one." Her words faltered as she pressed her baby closer, shivering from both cold and the remnants of fear. He knelt before her, strong hands gently brushing damp hair from her face, brushing away rain-soaked strands that clung to her cheeks. "You owe me nothing," he said firmly. "You did what you could to survive. That is enough. Your strength, your courage, that is more than enough to earn my protection." Even as she nodded, tears streaming down her face, she felt a strange sensation, a flutter of hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. For as long as she could remember, the world had been cruel, a place where betrayal and danger were constants. But here, in this moment, she felt a sliver of something she had almost forgotten: safety. The ship cut through the stormy waves with unmatched precision, guided by the Alpha King's unerring skill. Every movement was deliberate, every command to the crew measured and precise. Leora watched him, a mixture of awe and fascination curling in her chest. He was terrifying in his power yet mesmerizing in his care. The duality was almost too much to comprehend. The same hands that could command fear could also cradle life with such tenderness that it left her breathless. Hours passed as the storm began to weaken. Gradually, the wind lessened, and the waves, though still choppy, no longer threatened to devour them. And then, just as the horizon began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, the Alpha King turned the vessel toward land, a fortress of stone perched on the cliffs overlooking the sea. Its walls were formidable, high, and protective. A bastion of security against the wild forces of the North Sea. As they approached, Leora's heart swelled with a mixture of awe and relief. The fortress was a place of refuge, a sanctuary, and she sensed that within its walls, no harm would come to her or her child. The Alpha King brought the ship to dock with unwavering precision, guiding them to solid ground where the wind could no longer batter them, and the waves could no longer threaten their fragile lives. He led her through the gates of the fortress, the gates closing behind them with a solid, final thud that seemed to seal away the chaos of the storm forever. Leora felt the tension leave her body in small increments as she stepped onto the solid stone, holding her baby close. Every glance she cast revealed warriors and guards who paused to acknowledge the Alpha's presence, their respect and loyalty evident in the way they straightened, heads bowed slightly, and eyes lowered in silent recognition of their leader's authority. "You are safe here," he said, his golden eyes scanning the courtyard, then returning to her. "No one will touch you while I command this place. No storm, no enemy, no threat, nothing will harm you. Not while I live." Leora felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, a mixture of gratitude, awe, and something far deeper, something that made her stomach twist with anticipation she didn't yet fully understand. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the baby as she whispered, I believe you." He smiled, just slightly, just enough to show a softness beneath the unyielding authority of his presence. "Good. That is all I ask. Trust me, that is the beginning of everything else." For hours, he guided her through the fortress, showing her living quarters prepared for her and the baby, warm, secure, and comforting. Every detail seemed designed not just for protection, but for care. Even the guards, though vigilant and imposing, were courteous, allowing her to feel a sense of dignity and respect she had long been denied. Night fell over the fortress, the wind now a whisper against the stone walls, the sea a distant growl that could no longer reach them. Leora sat beside a fire, her baby asleep in her arms, and watched as the Alpha King tended to his duties, ensuring every corner of the fortress was secure. Even then, he found moments to check on her, his presence always close, reassuring, and unwavering. She felt an unspoken bond forming, fragile yet undeniable. He had saved them, yes, but he was more than a rescuer. He was a protector, a guardian, a force of nature tempered by compassion and care. And in the quiet warmth of the firelight, with the baby resting peacefully, she felt something new bloom within her heart: trust. And with trust came the first whisper of hope, that perhaps, in this fortress, under the protection of this Alpha King, she and her child could not only survive, but begin to live. The morning sunlight filtered through the high windows of the fortress, casting golden beams across the polished stone floors and the walls lined with ancient tapestries that told tales of generations past. Leora awoke with the baby nestled safely against her chest, the warmth of his small body providing a comfort that contrasted sharply with the cold, treacherous night she had survived at sea. For the first time in what felt like forever, she dared to breathe fully, without the constant fear of drowning or betrayal. Lucian, the Alpha King, had already risen. She could hear the subtle echo of his boots against the stone corridors as he moved with the precision and confidence that marked him as a leader born and bred for command. Though he was always vigilant, always ready for any threat, there was a softness to his presence here, a careful watchfulness over her and her child that felt like protection woven into the very air around her. Leora dressed quickly, careful with the baby still sleeping against her chest, and followed the faint sounds of movement through the fortress. When she stepped into the main hall, Lucian was there, speaking quietly to a few of his trusted guards. The moment his golden eyes met hers, the conversation stopped, and the atmosphere shifted subtly, a current of quiet acknowledgement passing between them. "You've rested," he said softly, his voice carrying both command and concern. "Good. You will need strength today." Leora's lips trembled slightly. "Strength? I didn't know I had any left," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the child in her arms. "I thought the storm, the sea, everything would take us both from this world." Lucian stepped closer, the sheer aura of authority surrounding him making her instinctively straighten her back, yet there was warmth in his eyes, a promise that she could allow herself to feel safe. "You have more strength than you realize," he said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "It is why you survived. You fought, even when all hope seemed lost. That courage, that life you've given your child, it is a bond that cannot be broken." Leora swallowed the lump in her throat. His words carried a weight she had never known, not just reassurance, but recognition. Not just comfort, but understanding. He saw her struggle, her fear, and yet he acknowledged her resilience. She wanted to say more, to tell him everything she had endured, the betrayals, the loneliness, the terror, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded, feeling the first flickers of trust form like tiny flames in her chest. The day unfolded slowly, each hour spent exploring the fortress, learning its layout, and adjusting to the sense of security that Lucien's presence brought. He introduced her to the guards and caretakers, each bowing slightly or offering a respectful nod, and Leora realized the depth of his influence. This was a man who commanded respect not through fear alone, but through a force of character and purpose. At noon, Lucien led her to the fortress gardens, a rare expanse of greenery amidst the stone walls, where the scent of flowers mingled with the salty sea breeze. The baby, cradled in her arms, fussed slightly at the unfamiliar surroundings, but Lucien's gentle touch reassured him, his presence calm and steady like the eye of a storm. "Here," he said softly, gesturing to a bench under the shade of an ancient oak, "you can rest. I will watch over you." Leora settled onto the bench, feeling the warmth of the sun on her damp hair and the soft leather of her boots against the ground. She dared to glance at him, studying the Alpha King who had saved them from death. Lucien's eyes were scanning the horizon, alert and calculating, yet every so often they flicked back to her and the baby, as though measuring their well-being with unspoken devotion. Hours passed in quiet observation and tentative conversation. Leora shared fragments of her story, carefully, cautiously, and Lucien listened with patience, never interrupting, never judging, only acknowledging the courage it took to speak. Every nod, every small gesture of understanding, built a bridge between them, connecting their hearts even when words were scarce. When evening fell, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet, Lucien brought them inside to the warmth of the hearth. The guards and servants had prepared a modest meal, but Lucien insisted on sitting close to her, watching her eat, his presence a shield against the darkness outside. "You are learning," he said quietly, as much to himself as to her, "that the world can be safe. That you can trust. That your child can thrive." Leora's eyes met his, filled with emotion she could no longer contain. I never believed such safety existed," she confessed. "Not after everything I've endured. But now, I feel it, and I feel hope." Lucien's lips curved in a small, rare smile, his golden eyes softening as he reached out to place a hand over hers, gentle yet firm. "Hope is only the beginning," he said. "Protection, trust, and love follow. And I swear, as long as I draw breath, I will ensure that nothing threatens you or your child again." The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the strength and warmth within him. In that moment, Leora understood something profound, that salvation was not just in the act of rescue, but in the unwavering, silent promise to guard Nur Ture and stand steadfast in the face of any storm. As the night deepened, Leora finally allowed herself to rest, the baby cradled safely in her arms, her body leaning against the Alpha King who had become their shield. Trust, fragile and new, had begun to take root. And in the quiet of the fortress, surrounded by stone walls and the whisper of the wind outside, a bond began to form, a bond of protection, of loyalty, and of a love that neither storm nor sea could destroy. The fortress, though a sanctuary from the storms of the North Sea, could not shield Leora from the shadows of her past. Even as she walked through its halls, the warmth of the fire and the calm presence of the Alpha King surrounding her, memories clawed at the edges of her mind, whispers of betrayal, flashes of faces who had turned their backs when she needed them most, the suffocating terror of being alone with a newborn in the merciless waves. She held her baby close, feeling the small, steady heartbeat beneath her chest, and allowed herself to acknowledge the fear that lingered. It was not weakness to remember, it was survival. Every shiver, every glance over her shoulder, every tightening of her hands around the child was a testament to the life she had fought so hard to protect. Lucien noticed, as he always did, though he did not intrude. His golden eyes followed her, not with suspicion or judgment, but with quiet concern. He knew that trust was not given lightly, that her heart, hardened by betrayal and sorrow, required time and patience to accept safety and care. And so he walked beside her, a constant presence, his body language calm, his gaze protective, speaking without words that she was not alone. "You think too much," he said softly one evening as they sat in the private garden, the baby asleep nearby. The wind carried a chill, and he draped his cloak around her shoulders, the warmth of his body sending a shiver of comfort through her. "The past is the past. It cannot touch you here." Leora shook her head, her lips trembling. "You don't understand? I've been betrayed by everyone I trusted. Left to die, abandoned. How can I believe that it will be different now?" Lucien's hand found hers, his fingers curling over hers with a strength that was firm yet gentle. "Because I am different," he said, his voice low, deliberate. "Because I will not fail you. Because I am not like those who abandoned you. I will protect you with everything I am. And I will make sure that no shadow from the past ever touches you or your child again." She looked into his eyes, searching for the truth in his words, and found it there, a promise as solid as the fortress walls surrounding them. But still, the fear lingered. Trust did not come overnight, and every flicker of doubt that had been seed by betrayal took time to erase. The days passed in a rhythm both new and strange. Lucien took her and her child under his constant care, teaching her to navigate the fortress, introducing her to trusted members of the pack, and providing guidance on how to ensure their safety. Every gesture, every protective action, every gentle word was a brick laid in the foundation of trust, slowly building a sense of belonging she had never imagined possible. Yet shadows were not so easily banished. One evening, a messenger arrived bearing news that made her heart seize. A distant cousin, one who had once promised aid but had also been known for cruelty and greed, had been spotted at the coast, seeking information about her and the child. The news reminded her of the fragility of their sanctuary, that the outside world could still intrude despite the fortress's strength. Lucien's reaction was immediate and unyielding. His body tensed, every movement radiating authority and readiness. "They will not harm you," he stated firmly, his golden eyes glinting like steel. "Not while I am here. Not while I command this pack." Leora felt her chest tighten, a mixture of relief and fear swirling within her. "But what if they try to take us?" she asked softly, almost afraid to speak the thought aloud. He knelt before her, his gaze unwavering, his voice a low growl that carried both reassurance and warning. "Then they will face me. And they will learn that no one defies the Alpha King and survives. You and your child are mine to protect. I will not let anyone, threaten what is mine." His words settled over her like a protective cloak, fierce and unyielding. For the first time, Leora realized that the Alpha King was not only her rescuer from the storm, but a fortress in human form. His strength, his loyalty, his unwavering commitment, it was as though the walls themselves had taken human shape, standing guard over her heart and the life she carried. As night fell, she held her child close and let herself rest in the assurance of his presence. Though shadows of the past lingered, they were no longer alone in facing them. Lucien's devotion was a constant, a light against the darkness that had threatened to consume her. And slowly, as the wind howled outside and the sea raged in the distance, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps the future could be different, safe, warm, and filled with a love she had never dared to imagine. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the baby slept peacefully and the fortress remained silent except for the soft crackle of the fire, Lucien knelt beside her. His hand brushed her hair back, and his golden eyes bore into hers with a promise that needed no words. In that gaze, she saw the unspoken truth, that no past betrayal, no shadow, storm could ever break the bond forming between them. And for the first time, Leora felt a fragile yet undeniable spark of hope, that maybe, just maybe, she and her child could finally know peace, protection, and a love fierce enough to banish the shadows of the past forever. The fortress was meant to be a haven, a place where Leora and her baby could finally breathe, safe from the cruel hands of the world. Yet even walls carved from stone and guarded by loyal warriors could not completely shield them from the turbulence of the heart, nor from the remnants of fear that clung to every shadow. Inside, a storm brewed, quieter than the North Sea's raging waves, but no less dangerous, and it threatened to unravel the fragile trust Leora had begun to place in the Alpha King. Morning arrived with a pale light, casting long shadows across the courtyard as Leora walked through the gardens with her child. The baby's small fingers curled around hers, and she allowed herself a moment of fragile joy. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the air calm, and the sea a distant memory. Yet her peace was shattered by whispers, subtle murmurs among the guards and servants, small cracks in the fortress's facade of security. Leora's eyes narrowed instinctively, sensing that not all eyes in the fortress welcomed her presence or her child. She tightened her grip on the baby and sought out Lucian, whose presence was as commanding as ever, a living shield against both storm and suspicion. He found her in the main hall, leaning casually against the railing but with the intensity of a predator ready to strike. His golden eyes immediately caught hers, scanning the air for any hint of threat. "There is tension," he said quietly, his voice low, almost imperceptible, yet carrying authority that silenced even the murmurs around him. "Some do not accept what they cannot control. Some fear the change I bring by protecting you and your child." Leora exhaled shakily, her heart still tight with unease. They hate me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Lucian's gaze softened, but only slightly. "They are wary. That is natural. But let me be clear, anyone who threatens you or your baby will answer to me. I will not tolerate disloyalty in my walls." The day unfolded under a tense undercurrent. Guards exchanged sidelong glances, whispers carried carefully under breath, and Leora felt the old familiar anxiety rising in her chest, the fear of betrayal, of being left defenseless once more. Yet every glance from Lucian, every protective movement, every subtle gesture reminded her that she was no longer alone, that she was watched over by someone whose strength was absolute, whose loyalty was unyielding. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, a commotion erupted near the northern gate. Leora's heart leapt into her throat as she saw a group of men, outsiders, mercenaries seeking information about her and her child, trying to breach the fortress walls. The guards moved swiftly, but Leora's baby whimpered in her arms, sensing the tension and fear. Lucian was there instantly, a blur of motion and controlled fury. He commanded the warriors with precision, his voice carrying over the chaos like a drumbeat of authority. "Hold the line. No one passes while I draw breath." Time slowed. Leora felt the baby trembling against her chest, and panic threatened to consume her, but Lucian's presence, fierce and unwavering, anchored her. He moved with predatory grace, intercepting the intruders with the force of a storm itself. The battle was swift but decisive. The intruders were no match for his strength and strategy. When the dust settled, the courtyard was silent, the attackers subdued, and the fortress secure once more. Lucian turned to her, his golden eyes scanning for any injury, any sign of distress. He knelt before her, gently taking the baby into his arms and holding him securely. "You are safe," he said, voice low and commanding. "I will not allow anyone to harm you. Not now, not ever." Leora's chest heaved as tears streamed down her face, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and awe at the man who had become their protector. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "For everything, for saving us again and again." He lowered his gaze to hers, eyes glimmering with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You need not thank me," he said, his voice softening only slightly. "Protecting you and your child is my duty, my promise, and my choice. And I will not fail you, not today, not tomorrow, not ever." The tension in the fortress eased, the whispers silenced, the guards more attentive than ever. And yet, Leora realized that the greatest storm was not the one outside the walls, it was the storm within her own heart. Fear, gratitude, admiration, and something deeper, attraction, trust, and an undeniable pull toward the Alpha King, battled for dominance. As night fell, she sat by the fire, the baby asleep in her arms, and watched Lucian patrol the fortress, every movement a testament to vigilance and care. She realized then that he was not only their shield but also the anchor her heart had been searching for. And though the storm had tested her trust and her courage, she understood something vital. Love, protection, and loyalty were not abstract concepts here. They were living, breathing realities, embodied in the man who had saved her from the North Sea, saved her child, and continued to protect them with unwavering devotion. That night, as the wind howled outside and the sea rumbled in the distance, Leora allowed herself to rest against the hearth, cradling the child and feeling the Alpha King's promise resonate through every corner of her being. The fortress had faced many storms, but none as powerful as the one brewing within her heart, and none so full of hope for the future that awaited them all. The morning sun rose over the fortress, spilling light across the stone walls and gardens that had begun to feel like home to Leora and her child. Despite the safety, the warmth, and the quiet security, her heart remained restless. The storm within her, the echoes of betrayal, fear, and loneliness, had not fully faded. Yet today, something shifted. Today, she felt it, the presence of the Alpha King not just as protector, but as someone who sought a deeper bond, one that went beyond safety and obligation. Lucian found her in the courtyard, the baby sleeping peacefully against her chest in a sling she had learned to wear. He approached with the same commanding presence that had first struck terror into the hearts of enemies, but there was a gentleness in his eyes, a softness reserved only for her. He knelt before them, one hand resting lightly on the baby's back, the other brushing a stray strand of hair from Leora's face. "You have survived," he said, voice steady, almost reverent. "And you have grown stronger with each day. I have watched, and I have seen your courage." Leora looked into his golden eyes, searching for the meaning behind his words. You are not just protecting us anymore, are you?" she whispered, her voice hesitant. He smiled, a rare, subtle curve of his lips, and nodded. "No, protection is only the beginning. I will always guard your life, your child, your heart, but I want more. I want you to trust me fully, to allow me into the spaces your past has made you hide. You are not alone, Leora, not now, not ever." Her chest tightened. She wanted to recoil, to shield herself as she always had, yet there was a magnetic pull in his presence, in the intensity and sincerity in his eyes, that drew her closer. Slowly, tentatively, she allowed herself to lean into him, the baby resting between them like a bridge uniting their worlds. Lucian reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw gently, deliberately. "You are mine," he said softly, a claim not of ownership in a cruel sense, but of devotion, of commitment, of unyielding intent. "And I will not let the world take you from me. Nor will I allow you to doubt my loyalty, my desire, my love." Leora's breath caught. The words carried a weight, a fire, a truth that resonated in the very marrow of her bones. She had known fear, suffering, and loneliness, but she had never known a claim so powerful, so rooted in protection and respect, that could feel like home. She faltered, unsure if the trembling of her lips was from the cold morning air or from the storm of emotions inside her. I don't know how to accept that. I've never been given a chance to feel safe, to feel wanted." Lucian's gaze softened further, a depth of understanding passing through him. "Then let me show you. Let me prove that you and your child are the most precious things in my world. Every heartbeat of mine is yours. And when the world threatens you, I will stand taller than its might, fiercer than its fury, and unbreakable in my resolve." For the first time, Leora felt the walls around her heart crack, just slightly, just enough to allow a fragile warmth to seep through. She realized that the Alpha King's claim was not a cage, but a promise, a sanctuary not built of stone, but of loyalty, devotion, and unshakable love. The day progressed in a quiet intimacy. Lucian taught her how to navigate the fortress with confidence, showing her secret passages, safe spots, and defensive strategies that reassured her that they could withstand any attack. But beyond the practical lessons, he watched her closely, offering gentle guidance, fleeting touches, and glances full of meaning that spoke to something far deeper than mere protection. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in fiery reds and golds, Lucian led her to the cliffside gardens, overlooking the vast expanse of the North Sea. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply breathe, to feel, to exist without fear. Lucian stepped close, his hand brushing hers in a tentative, yet commanding gesture. "Do you feel it?" he asked, his voice low, carrying the weight of his claim. "The bond between us, the pull that cannot be denied?" Leora looked up, her heart pounding. She did feel it, a connection that defied reason, rooted in gratitude, awe, and something more primal. The Alpha King had not only saved their lives, he had awakened something in her that she thought had died long ago. I feel it," she admitted, her voice trembling. "And I want to trust it." Lucian's smile deepened, and without another word, he drew her close. His lips met hers in a kiss that was fierce, protective, and intimate all at once. It was not just a kiss of passion, but of possession, of promise, of an unspoken vow that neither storm, nor enemy, nor fear could ever undo. The baby stirred slightly, nestled safely between them, and Leora felt the warmth of their small family, fragile, newly formed, but unbreakable in its bond. Lucian held them both close, a living shield against the world, against the past, and against any fear that lingered in her heart. As night fell over the fortress, stars reflecting in the calm waters of the sea below, Leora allowed herself to rest against him fully, to trust fully, and to believe that this claim, the Alpha King's fierce, unwavering claim, was the beginning of a life that could finally be hers, safe, loved, and whole. The fortress breathed with quiet strength, the walls solid and unwavering, yet within them, the hearts of its inhabitants pulsed with a new, fragile energy. Leora moved through the halls with her baby snug against her chest, feeling the comfort of stone beneath her feet and the watchful presence of the Alpha King ever near. Even in the safety of these walls, she could not fully silence the echo of the past, the betrayal, the near death in the storm, the constant fear that had once been her only companion. Yet Lucian, the Alpha King, was slowly changing the rhythm of her life. Every gesture, every touch, every word, was a reminder that she was no longer alone. He did not just protect her from physical threats, he shielded her heart, her mind, and her very soul. And though she had been cautious, wary of attachment, she felt the undeniable pull of something deeper, a bond that grew stronger with every shared glance, every whispered reassurance, every heartbeat that synchronized with theirs. The morning was crisp, the wind carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers from the cliffside gardens. Lucian led her there, his hand brushing hers in a fleeting but intentional touch that made her pulse quicken. "Today," he said, his voice low and steady, "we begin the next step." Leora tilted her head, curiosity mingling with trepidation. "The next step?" she asked, though a part of her already knew what he meant. The tension that had bound her heart for years was beginning to unravel, and she could feel the pull of his presence like a tether connecting them. "Yes," Lucian said, his golden eyes unwavering. "Trust and protection have brought us this far, but hearts unbound require more. They require honesty, vulnerability, and courage. Today, we face that together." As they walked along the cliffside path, the sea crashing below, Leora felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. She had spent so long guarding her heart, shielding herself from pain, from betrayal, from disappointment. But here, in the presence of this man who had saved her and her child, she began to feel a strange liberation. She was learning that vulnerability was not weakness, it could be strength, a bridge to love she had never dared to imagine. They stopped at the edge of the cliffs, the wind tugging at her hair and the baby nestled safely in her arms. Lucian's gaze softened, and he reached out, cupping her cheek with a hand that was both firm and gentle. "Tell me your fears," he said, his voice a low command wrapped in endearness. "I cannot protect what you hide from me. You must let me in, Leora. Let me see the parts of you the world has tried to destroy." Her breath caught, the weight of the past pressing against her chest, threatening to make her falter. But then she looked into his eyes, the unwavering golden eyes that had saved her life, that had held her safe through storms and threats, and found the courage to speak. "I fear," she began, voice trembling, "that I am not enough. That my past will always haunt me. That the storms I have survived, the betrayals I have endured, they will never let me truly be happy. That no matter how fiercely I fight, I will be left alone again." Lucian listened, silent and patient, his hand never leaving her cheek. When she finished, he lowered his forehead to hers, his voice a whisper but filled with absolute conviction. "You are enough," he said. "And nothing from the past can undo the bond we are forging. Your strength, your courage, your heart, they are more than enough to hold my love. And as for storms, I will face them all, no matter the cost, to keep you and your child safe." The wind swirled around them, the sea below roaring, yet in that moment, Leora felt a profound calm. The Alpha King's words, his presence, his unwavering protection, were an anchor in the tempest of her life. She realized that love, real and unshakable, was not about perfection or freedom from fear. It was about choosing to face the world together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Lucian took her hands in his, pressing them gently against his chest. "Your heart is safe with me," he whispered. "And my heart is yours." Tears pricked her eyes, but they were tears of release, of surrender, of hope. She leaned closer, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future where love was not just a fleeting dream, but a living reality. The baby stirred, sensing the tension and emotion, and Lucian laughed softly, a deep, resonant sound that carried both relief and joy. He lifted the child into his arms with ease, holding him against his chest, and Leora felt a surge of gratitude and awe. Here was a man who had become their shield, their protector, and now their family. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Leora and Lucian stood together at the cliff's edge, the wind tangling their hair, the sea stretching endlessly before them. Hearts unbound, trust deepened, and a love that had survived storms, both literal and emotional, began to blossom fully. The fortress, though formidable, had never been completely immune to the outside world, and Leora was about to learn that even walls of stone could not guard against every threat. The morning began with a deceptive calm, sunlight spilling through high windows, birds singing in the gardens, and the baby cooing softly in her arms. Yet beneath the serene surface, a storm was quietly gathering, one that would test the bonds she had begun to forge with the Alpha King, Lucian. Lucian sensed it before she did. As he moved through the corridors, alert and commanding, his golden eyes flicked to every shadow, every corner, every movement that seemed out of place. Leora followed him, clutching the baby, her pulse quickening as she noticed the tension that coiled in his posture. "What is it?" she asked softly, fear threading through her words. "Is someone outside?" Lucian shook his head, his expression unreadable. "No, not outside," he said, his voice low and measured. "This is different. It is a test of the bond we share, of your trust and my own patience." Leora frowned, unsure what he meant, but before she could ask further, a sharp sound echoed through the fortress. The hurried footsteps of a messenger, the rustle of paper, and the anxious eyes of a guard. Lucian moved to intercept, his movements fluid and commanding, and Leora felt the familiar surge of awe and safety in his presence. The messenger bowed deeply, his voice trembling. "Alpha King, there are rumors, threats, an outsider claims to know of your new wards. They speak of betrayal within the walls." Leora's chest tightened, fear coiling in her stomach. "Betrayal?" she whispered. "But we are safe here." Lucian's gaze was sharp, slicing through the panic. "Safety is only as strong as the trust within these walls," he said. "And trust can be tested in ways that neither stone nor sword can prevent." The hours that followed were tense, filled with careful observation, questioning, and quiet scrutiny of those around them. Leora watched Lucian command his guards with an authority that was absolute, his golden eyes penetrating, unyielding, and impossible to deceive. Yet even as he maintained control, she sensed the emotional weight pressing upon him, the burden of responsibility, the fear of failing the only two lives that mattered most to him. It was late in the afternoon when the first true test arrived. A trusted guard, one who had long served under Lucian, approached with a hesitant step. His voice, though respectful, carried an undertone of conflict. "Alpha, I am troubled. I fear we may have been deceived. There are whispers among the servants, some do not believe in the safety of the new wards." Lucian's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening, and the air around him seemed to vibrate with his silent fury. He approached the guard, his presence so commanding that Leora instinctively pressed the baby closer to her chest. "You speak of doubts," he said slowly, deliberately, his voice a low growl. "Doubts that threaten the safety of my family. If you cannot trust me, if you cannot act with loyalty, then you will remove yourself from these walls immediately." The guard bowed, swallowing hard, and Leora realized how absolute Lucian's authority was. A ruler not by fear alone, but by the clarity of purpose, the unwavering commitment to those under his protection. Yet the incident left a mark, a subtle unease that reminded her that danger was never entirely absent, and that trust, once broken, could take years to rebuild. Evening fell, and with it came a rare moment of quiet between Leora and Lucian. They stood in the gardens, the baby asleep nearby, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and sea salt. Leora's hand found his, tentative but seeking connection, and he did not pull away. "This day," she began softly, her voice trembling, "it has shown me how fragile trust can be. How easily fear and doubt can creep in, even here, where I thought we were safe." Lucian's grip on her hand tightened gently. "Yes," he admitted, his gaze unwavering. "Trust is earned, protected, and tested. That is the way of the world. And today, we faced that test. And you have shown courage beyond measure, allowing yourself to remain open even when fear threatened to consume you." Tears pricked her eyes. "And you have shown me what it is to be safe, to be protected, and to be loved. Even when tested, you never wavered." Lucian stepped closer, tilting her chin gently so their eyes met. "Because you and your child are the center of my world," he whispered, voice full of heat and sincerity. "And no test, no betrayal, no shadow can ever take that from me. You are mine, Leora, in every sense that matters, and I will prove that to you every single day." The night stretched around them, deep and silent, yet filled with a profound intimacy. Leora rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the unshakable strength in his arms, and the unwavering promise in his eyes. Though bonds could be tested, she realized that love, when true and fiercely guarded, was indestructible. In the quiet of the fortress, with the baby safe and the stars twinkling above, Leora understood a truth she had never dared to hope for. That even the fiercest storms, the deepest shadows, and the most testing moments could not break the bond she shared with the Alpha King. Instead, they strengthened it, forged it anew, and bound their hearts together in a love that was unshakable, enduring, and unbreakable. The fortress had always been a place of refuge, but safety was an illusion as fragile as morning mist. Leora sensed it first, the subtle tension in the air, the way the guards' movements became sharper, more calculated, the way shadows seemed to linger longer in corners, as if hiding secrets that refused to be revealed. Even the baby, usually content in her arms, fussed occasionally, as though sensing the unease she could not yet name. Lucian was the first to notice the change. His golden eyes scanned every passage, every courtyard, every entrance, catching details that others missed. He moved with purpose, his steps quiet but deliberate, radiating authority and vigilance. Leora followed him, her heart tight in her chest, trusting his instincts even as a cold fear began to seep into her own veins. "There is something off," Lucian murmured, voice low, almost a growl. "Something the eyes cannot yet see. But it is there, lurking." Leora tightened her hold on the baby. Do you mean, someone is coming? Or, something worse? He shook his head slowly. I do not yet know. But whatever it is, it seeks to disturb the peace we have fought so hard to create. And I will not allow it to touch you or your child. The hours passed with an uneasy rhythm. Guards patrolled with heightened alertness, the baby slept fitfully, and Leora felt the weight of impending danger pressing against her chest. She knew that Lucien's vigilance was absolute, his presence alone a shield, but she could not help the tremor of fear that had lodged itself deep within her. Late that afternoon, a sudden alarm shattered the tense calm. The fortress gates were breached by a small but skilled group of mercenaries, outsiders who had tracked them, seeking leverage, information, or perhaps revenge. Chaos erupted, swords clashing and shouts echoing across the stone walls. Leora clutched her baby to her chest, instinct screaming at her to hide, to run, but her feet remained rooted as Lucien moved with the precision of a storm unleashed. He intercepted the attackers with fluid grace, each strike calculated, efficient, and lethal. The baby whimpered in her arms, and she felt Lucien's presence enveloping them, his protective aura so intense it was almost tangible. Every enemy who dared approach was met with a wall of golden eyes, fierce strength, and unwavering authority. When the dust settled, the mercenaries lay defeated, some unconscious, others bound for questioning. Lucien turned to her, voice low, filled with both command and relief. Are you unharmed? Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling with adrenaline and awe. Thanks to you, always thanks to you. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her and the baby, burning with intensity and devotion. You are my life. Your safety is my oath. No unseen threat, no shadow from the past, will ever claim what is mine. Even as the immediate danger passed, the fortress hummed with tension. The realization settled on Leora like a heavy cloak. Peace was fragile, and threats often came unseen, slip. Ping through shadows and whispers. But alongside fear, a deep admiration and trust had taken root in her heart. Lucien had proven, yet again, that his devotion was absolute, that his strength was not merely physical, but a fierce, unyielding loyalty that no enemy could break. That night, the fortress quiet except for the soft crackle of the hearth and the gentle breathing of her child, Leora allowed herself to rest against Lucien. His hands were firm on her shoulders, warm against her skin, and his golden eyes reflected the firelight, unwavering, protective, and filled with a love she had never known. You are mine, he whispered again, the words soft but deadly in their certainty. And no one, no force in this world, will ever take you from me. Tears slipped down Leora's cheeks, not of fear, but of release, of awe, of understanding. In the midst of unseen threats, in the face of danger both known and unknown, she realized that the Alpha King was more than a protector. He was the anchor of her heart, the shield around her soul, and the unwavering promise of a love that could withstand any storm. As she drifted into a restless sleep, the baby nestled between them, she finally allowed herself to believe in the unshakable bond forming between them. The fortress could face threats, shadows could lurk in corners, and danger could always emerge, yet here, with Lucien by her side, she knew one truth that no unseen force could alter. Their hearts were bound, and nothing could sever the connection forged in fire, storm, and unwavering devotion. The dawn broke over the fortress like a promise, spilling golden light across stone walls that had witnessed storms both literal and emotional. Leora stirred in her bed, the baby nestled safely in her arms, and for the first time in years, a profound sense of peace washed over her. The past, the betrayals, the terror, the nights adrift in the North Sea, and the endless fear of abandonment, felt distant, like shadows that no longer held power over her. Lucien, the Alpha King, entered quietly, his presence filling the room with the calm authority she had come to rely on and love. His golden eyes softened as they fell upon her and the child, and for a brief moment, the fortress seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the three of them in the vast world. You've slept, he said, his voice low, deliberate, yet filled with warmth. Yes, she replied, a small smile curving her lips. For the first time in so long. I feel safe. Really safe. Lucian stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Safety is only the beginning, he said. You have endured storms and shadows that would have broken anyone. Yet here you are, alive, unbroken, and more courageous than you know. Today, we solidify what we have fought for, your life, your child, our family, and the kingdom that surrounds us. Leora's heart thumped in her chest. She had come to trust him, to rely on his strength and judgment, but even now, the weight of the day ahead felt immense. The fortress was secure, the enemies defeated or banished, but there were still those who lingered in the shadows, those who would test her courage and the Alpha King's authority one last time. Lucian held her gaze, unyielding, commanding, yet tender. We face them together, no longer as protector and protected, but as partners, as a family. Today, you will see that the bonds forged in fire and storm cannot be broken, not by treachery, not by fear, and not by the world itself. The day unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of loyalty, strength, and revelation. The fortress was alive with activity as Lucian moved among his people, ensuring that every corner was secure, every guard vigilant, and every ally fully committed. Leora followed him, baby in arms, learning to navigate not just the halls of stone but the intricate balance of power, loyalty, and influence that defined the Alpha King's rule. By midday, the remaining threats had been identified and neutralized. Those who had sought to harm her or the child were confronted with the Alpha King's presence, a display of authority so absolute and unwavering that even the boldest adversaries trembled. Leora watched as he dealt with each challenge, not with cruelty, but with precision, intelligence, and the fierce protective instinct that had saved them countless times. And then, in the quiet of the afternoon, he brought her to the highest tower of the fortress. From this vantage point, the kingdom stretched before them, rolling hills, dense forests, and the endless expanse of the North Sea shimmering in the distance. The sun caught the waves in a dazzling display, as if reflecting the triumph and hope now filling their lives. You see this? He asked softly, his hand brushing against hers. This is our kingdom, our life, ours to protect, ours to shape, and ours to love. And you are the heart of it. You and your child are the reason this kingdom stands, strong and unyielding. Tears welled in her eyes, not of fear or sorrow, but of overwhelming gratitude, love, and relief. I never thought I could have this, she whispered. I never thought I could be safe, or loved, or happy. Lucian cupped her face, his touch both commanding and tender. Happiness is not something you stumble upon, Leora. It is something you fight for, something you claim. And today, we claim it, together. He drew her close, their foreheads touching, and whispered promises that carried the weight of storms survived, battles won, and hearts united. No past pain, no betrayal, no shadow will ever touch you again. You are mine, and I am yours. Our family is unbreakable, and our bond, eternal. The baby stirred, sensing the love radiating between them, and Lucian lifted the child into his arms, cradling him with reverence. Leora felt her heart swell, knowing that they were no longer just survivors of the storm, but a family bound by love, courage, and unwavering loyalty. As evening fell, the fortress quieted, and the stars shimmered like 1,000 guardians above. Leora and Lucian stood together at the cliffside, their child between them, their hearts intertwined. The kingdom was secure, the threats vanquished, and the bond between them unbreakable. For the first time since her darkest nights at sea, Leora allowed herself to hope without fear, to love without hesitation, and to dream of a future filled with joy, family, and peace. The Alpha King had claimed her, her child, and her heart, not with force alone, but with devotion, protection, and unwavering love. And in that golden light of sunset, with the fortress standing tall behind them and the endless sea stretching forward, Leora knew one absolute truth. They had survived storms, conquered shadows, and forged a life unshakable in its strength and beauty. Their kingdom was secured, in stone, in heart, and in love. The dawn broke gently over the fortress, the first light of day spilling through the towering stone walls, casting long, golden beams across the halls that had once been filled with fear and uncertainty. Leora awoke slowly, her baby curled safely in her arms, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat like a balm over years of pain, betrayal, and survival. For the first time in her life, she felt a clarity she had never known, a sense that the long nights of terror, of running, of hiding from the cruel hands of the world, had finally come to an end. Lucian, the Alpha King, moved silently into the room, his presence as commanding as the fortress itself. His golden eyes softened as they fell upon her and the child, and the weight of the past and the promise of the future seemed to merge in the quiet intimacy of the morning. He knelt beside her, his hand brushing tenderly over the baby's soft hair, and then reached for hers. The warmth of his touch, firm yet gentle, sent a shiver through her, a reminder that she was no longer alone, and that the storms she had survived were behind her. "You are awake," he said softly, his voice low and deliberate, carrying both command and comfort. "Today, everything changes. Today, the kingdom you never dared to hope for becomes ours. Today, your life, your child, and your heart are no longer at the mercy of shadows or storms." Leora's lips trembled as tears filled her eyes. I never thought I could see a day like this," she whispered. A day without fear, without pain, without betrayal." Lucian's gaze never wavered. He took her hand, pressing it to his chest so she could feel the steady beat of his heart. "All the storms, all the dangers, all the nights you thought you would not survive, they led us here. To this moment. You are mine, and I am yours. Forever. Not as a protector and ward, but as a mate, a partner, a family. Nothing will ever come between us again." Outside the walls, the kingdom stretched in serene beauty, rolling hills, dense forests, and the vast North Sea glinting under the sun's awakening light. Leora took a deep breath, feeling the weight of survival lift from her shoulders, replaced with hope, love, and a sense of belonging she had never thought possible. The fortress was alive with preparation. Loyal pack members moved efficiently, their presence a testament to Lucian's leadership and the unbreakable bond between those who had chosen loyalty over fear. Every detail, every arrangement, every gaze exchanged carried the silent acknowledgement of the victories won, not through cruelty or force alone, but through unwavering devotion, courage, and love. Lucian guided Leora to the main courtyard, where the wind carried the scent of salt, stone, and blooming flowers. The baby, secure in her arms, wriggled slightly, sensing the energy of the moment, a mixture of triumph, relief, and the unspoken promise of safety. Lucian placed a hand on her shoulder, his golden eyes scanning the assembled faces of those who had supported, protected, and stood firm alongside them. "They are yours as much as mine," he said quietly. "The fortress, the kingdom, the lives within it, all are ours to protect together. And now, the last shadows can be vanquished." Leora's eyes filled with awe and love. "And the threats, the enemies, they will never return?" she asked, her voice trembling, though a hint of strength now threaded through it. Lucian's expression hardened with quiet authority. "Not while I draw breath. Anyone who dares rise against us will face the full strength of an Alpha King who does not falter, does not hesitate, and does not forgive. You and your child are untouchable, shielded by my devotion and the loyalty of all who follow me." For the first time in years, Leora allowed herself to imagine a future without fear. She felt the warmth of Lucian's presence, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against hers, the undeniable strength of the bond they had forged in storms, shadows, and battle. It was not only love that bound them, but trust, respect, and an unshakable commitment that could withstand any force the world might unleash. As evening descended, painting the sky with hues of crimson, gold, and violet, Leora and Lucian stood atop the highest tower of the fortress. The baby nestled safely between them, his small fingers curling around hers and Lucian's. The wind tousled their hair, carrying the scent of freedom, victory, and the unspoken promise of a life rebuilt from the ashes of terror. Lucian held Leora close, his forehead resting against hers, his voice a low murmur that carried weight and devotion. "This is ours," he whispered. "Not just the kingdom, not just the fortress, but this, our love, our family, our life. You are mine, Leora, in every sense, and I will not let anything or anyone ever take you from me." Tears spilled freely now, not of fear or sorrow, but of relief, gratitude, and a deep, overwhelming love. Leora pressed herself closer to him, feeling the full force of their connection, a bond forged in survival, strengthened by trials, and solidified in the unbreakable promise of devotion. The fortress, the kingdom, the sea beyond, and the heavens above all seemed to acknowledge the moment, a final, silent witness to the triumph of love over fear, courage over despair, and loyalty over betrayal. Leora understood, fully and completely, that she and her child were no longer vulnerable, no longer adrift, no longer at the mercy of fate. They were claimed, protected, and loved beyond measure. And as the stars began to glitter above the North Sea, mirrored in the calm waters below, she allowed herself to believe, to truly believe, in a life filled with peace, family, and a love that would endure for all eternity. The Alpha King had secured more than a fortress, he had secured hearts, a family, and a kingdom bathed in the golden light of hope. The baby cooed softly between them, Lucien's arms wrapped around both mother and child, and Leora rested her head against his chest. In that moment, everything felt whole. Every fear had been vanquished. Every shadow banished. Every storm survived. And for the first time, Leora smiled without hesitation, without doubt, without restraint, knowing that their future, their family, and the